I'm Ryan.
And I'm Talia.
We're both licensed marriage and family therapists.
And today,
like every day,
we're here to debunk myths
and deliver truth about dating, relationships, and everything in between.
Trust us.
It's awesome.
Hello.
Hello, Talia.
How are you?
I'm a little disappointed today.
Oh, no.
I found out from one of our mutual friends you've been lying to me.
Oh, shit.
Mm-hmm.
They told you?
Yeah, they told me.
Oh.
Absolutely.
What did they say?
Oh, they told me that you hate when I'm wearing green, even though just earlier today you were complimenting how well green goes with my eyes. You baby! I can't believe it! You liar!
Yeah, cat's out of the bag. I lied to you. I lied right to your face.
Yeah. Although actually I realize this is going to be an interesting starting point for a very deep conversation, a long one. So we're going to have to divide this up into 2 episodes. So for those who have actually checked the title of, I forgot to say, episode 101.
Yes.
Boing! Episode 101. This is going to be part 1 of lying in a relationship and what lies are and what happens and kind of how to deal with, how to address lying when it comes up in relationships.
Yes.
And for those just who were concerned about me and Talia, that was just a joke, everybody.
It's a joke. It's satire. So
Talia,
just tune in for the rest of the episode. I am generally not a liar, I would say.
Talia tells me to my face all the time I look like shit, so it's fine.
Daily, honestly. I just send him a text and I'm like, you look like shit.
Like, hey man, maybe you should shower. I don't know.
Smell you from here. Yeah. No. Yeah, it's a good episode. We talked about it last time, floating ideas out there because somebody had given us a listener question, well, more of a listener comment, that this person was like, I caught him in a lie. And I'm like, no, you didn't. Yeah. That's not what a lie is. So we are going to unpack a bit of the difference between, a lot of the difference actually between lying, intentionally being deceptive and saying something that's categorically untrue, and withholding information or not giving the full truth or only answering specific questions that are asked. Those are 2 different concepts in relationships. And I know some people are listening like, that's the same thing. You're entitled to believe whatever you want, but there is a difference between intentionally lying and then withholding information or not giving the entire full truth.
Yeah, super common to get one or both partners sharing, their hurt and frustration about a lie of omission or information that was not shared that they felt deserved to be shared. And that's still an important dynamic. And that's what we want to talk about in depth today. And then we'll talk about, like you said, the straight up deceptive lie. I'm telling you something completely not true. On part 2 of Liar, Pants on Fire.
I love it.
So, Talia, where do you want to start off with this omission piece, that maybe one partner not giving all of the details about something, a full account, only answering directly what was answered or something like that. Give us a starting off point about that dynamic in a relationship.
I'll start, I think, with the definitions would probably be the best way to start. Absolutely. So like dictionary definition and phrase-wise, lying is defined as marked by or containing untrue statements, like being dishonest or untruthful. Similar to deceit, which would be trying to actively deceive somebody by concealing or misrepresenting the truth. And then that is different from withholding information, because lying is saying something that you know to be false, but withholding information is leaving out something regardless of whatever you're being asked. So the person asks about, well, where were you Friday night? Like, were you with her Friday night? And you're like, no. And that's genuinely true because you were with her Saturday night. I didn't lie. You just didn't ask me about Saturday night. So that's like the difference here. And the person asking is like, well, why wouldn't you have told me that? And it's like, because it would have blown up my spot. Why would I tell you that? You didn't ask. I was truthful with whatever you asked me. And this is that the nitty gritty details that couples will often, whether they know it or not, will often get in fights about, because it's a desire for, I need you to tell me. It's like that scene from the movie, like, I want you to tell me the whole truth, the full truth, and nothing but the truth. And the person's like, you can't handle the truth. That is truly how it is sometimes in relationships, that there are times where the people cannot handle the truth. They don't actually want the answers to the question they're asking. And I caution couples when they're asking too many questions in a certain direction, be careful, because you can't unhear some things. You can't unlearn information. And if your gut is so strong, does it really make a difference if they give you data? Like, is knowing this actually going to make a difference in the decisions that you make? Or is this just going to be information you use to hurt your own feelings, and you're going to stay with this person and not make anything different? So I think there's definitely something of benefit to separate and really make distinct. Is your partner lying to you? Are they actively concealing the truth and also giving you false information? Or because maybe you don't handle it well when they've said the truth, they are not telling you the full truth because they don't want to get yelled at. They don't want to get punished. They don't want the outcome of how you're going to experience them telling the truth. So they just keep you on a need to know basis. And there is also something a bit primal to this as well, like instinctual. The differences between men and women, we want to share a lot of details because that's what keeps us alive and safe, and demonstrates that we are showing interest, or that somebody shows interest in us if they ask a lot of questions, because we're like, okay, great, I'm going to survive. Men have more of like the don't ask, don't tell policy. It's like as little information as possible. Privacy is valued above pretty much all else. I'm not going to give you unnecessary information. Whereas women usually are like, no, that's all necessary. Like, I need to know every single part of your inner workings. And guys are like, irrelevant. Like, objection, counselor, next question. Like, I don't need to answer this. So being clear on what is the content, that if you are accusing your partner of lying, or they're accusing you of lying, is it actually false? Or is it you not having shared the full entirety of all the information that a partner could use to make a different decision, is usually how I frame it for my couple. So it's like, no, you didn't lie. I agree. However, the withholding of that key data point that wasn't asked about, your partner just said it themselves, would have directly changed the trajectory of the relationship, and you withheld their ability to make a fully informed decision. And that's what we're here about. It's not accusing you of being a liar. You robbed your partner of the opportunity to fully consent to whatever was going on in the relationship, or move forward knowingly. So that's where the differences are.
Yeah. And where I tend to come in my work with couples is noticing that the partner who's accusing someone of a lie,
right,
isn't really getting a core message across or getting what they want, because
right,
understandably, when I hear, hey, you're a liar, and I'm like, I didn't lie, I'm in immediate defense mode. I'm immediately like, what? And then suddenly the conversation becomes a bicker about, is it a lie or not?
Are you a liar or not?
Yeah. And like, that's not exactly what really matters in those moments. As you're saying, it's about, hey, can we talk about, are we being fully, you're not saying it this way, but what I hear you say, how I take it is, are we fully connected? Are we giving information back and forth so that each of us can make appropriate choices for ourselves and contribute fully to the relationship?
Yeah.
So it's important to look at that dynamic of, if I'm going to use that, buzzword, you're a liar. How's that actually going to affect a response from the person who maybe didn't give all of the details?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's like kind of my first point of looking at that. And I think the important thing, or a very common dynamic that's important to remember, is the person who perceives the lie is going through an experience of, I'm hurt. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes it could be, I'm hurt and I'm scared, because if you lied to me, then is there a betrayal? Is there other things? There's doubts. I'm insecure about this relationship or what you've done. Ouch. Hurt and fear.
Yeah.
And then the partner who had the omission, you mentioned a few reasons why that could be happening.
Yeah.
I think what's important is not assuming,
right,
from a hurt and fear space, that the person who didn't share all the details was intentionally trying to be deceitful just to hurt, deceive, betray someone.
That says a lot more about the person viewing the other person that way than it does about the person exhibiting those behaviors. Like, how could you do this to me? And it's like, I wasn't thinking about you, shockingly enough. Like, making this about you, I'm not.
Most commonly, I would say, I don't have data for this. This isn't based on research. This is from what I work with day to day in my experience. Is it's most often not an intentional deceit. It's like what you just said, someone going, oh, I didn't really think about that detail in this part. That wasn't the consideration, which I get that can be hurtful also, but that's a learning growth opportunity that well-intentioned people, when they're not on the defensive, will go, oh, okay, I can hear that and try to grow. But that's a different intention of I'm wanting to be deceitful versus I wasn't thinking about it. And then another common one that I hear all the time, and not based on research, just on my experience that I support couples through, is what you mentioned earlier that I want to highlight is, oh, I did think about sharing all of it, but I'm actually, if I don't want to share because I know it's going to blow up in my face. And not necessarily because blow up in my face, I did something wrong. It's not always that thought out. It's about, I want to avoid conflict. I want to be able to be in a good place. I don't want this to turn into something really, really painful for both of us.
Yeah.
And that's an important dynamic to go, okay, now there's a response back and forth that matters.
Yeah.
So it's pretty verbose, but important to not assume that it's deceit versus I didn't think about you versus I don't want to cause a huge conflict, so I'm scared to share.
Or in times past, I've shared truths with you and you've dismissed them. You've said that I'm wrong. You've yelled at me for them, shamed me. Why you're not, I've always preached this, be a safe person to tell the truth to. I may not like what the truth is, but I appreciate you telling me the truth. That's the key piece. If I'm saying tell the truth, I can't then be like, that's bullshit. The person's like, but it's not. Like, it's what you asked for. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's not true. And the experience of the partner thinking like, well, it's usually projective because the partner's like, well, I never don't think about you when I make decisions. How could you not? And it's like shocking to them to be like, yeah, your partner doesn't think about you 24/7. That's usually a female thing. It occupies most of our thoughts. It doesn't necessarily occupy most of men's thoughts. I'm not saying that there aren't people out there who are different, of course, but on an average stereotypic level, women are usually the ones that are more all consumed with the idea of a relationship than men. And then obviously attachment styles, trauma history, so much else plays into this to change an individual's view of this. But on the average, that is something that when we are working with our own mind on how much of our behaviors are filtered through what would my partner think, not to a negative level, but to a genuine level of like, I am not solo, I'm in a relationship. I'd like to weigh the impact of this. You can still make the decisions you're going to make, but I am a big fan of making the decision consciously. And even that would prevent the paradoxes. If you thought about it consciously and you're like, yeah, my partner probably wouldn't like it if I cheated on them or lied to them or whatever else. So I'm not going to do it. Because you're bypassing that discomfort of even thinking about it, you just go right into action and then the aftermath. It's very adolescent where you talk to teens and it's like, what were you thinking? Well, they weren't because their prefrontal cortex is not really as developed as an adult's and they were feeling first and they did it because it felt good. And then afterwards they're like, oh, that was probably kind of dumb to do. That's what adults go into as well. We like regress back to that more adolescent mind state. And something you shared brought this up for me. This was years ago, and I was at a bar and there was this really hot guy, and I'm not shy. That should not be a shock for people by now. I would go up and hit on guys. No problem. I'm confident. So I walked up. There was this girl talking to him and she walked away. I was waiting. I was being polite. Then I walked up and I was like, hey, I'm Talia. Nice to meet you. And I forget what his name was. He's like, hi, I'm so-and-so. Nice to meet you. And I was like, how's your night going? You know, small talk. And I said, so was that your girlfriend earlier? And he's like, nope, that's not my girlfriend. And I was like, great. Chatting some more. And I was like, so what do you do for work? What's your work schedule? Small talk all over the span of like maybe 3 or 4 minutes. And I was like, cool. Like that works for me. Like, would you want to go out next Saturday or whatever? And he's like, oh no, I have a girlfriend. And I was like, I just asked you. And he said, no, that's not my girlfriend, but I do have one. And I was like, okay, we could have just saved both of us five. But of course, the flattery, like maybe he wanted to be flirted with, whatever. Like I look back on it, he clearly got something from it. Otherwise, right then he would have said, "No, that's not my girlfriend, but I have one." Yeah. But he let me go through that, and it wasn't untrue. That girl that walked away was not his girlfriend. I should have asked, "Do you have a girlfriend?" That was on me that I wasn't specific enough.
Well, and that goes to that idea of someone not thinking about the other person. And this is a little bit different. And I'm not saying that he was not thinking about his girlfriend. It was, who knows what's going on in his mind? Yeah.
It's just probably, no, that's not her. You didn't ask if I had one though.
And he just, it could be as simple as, yes, maybe he was enjoying the flirtation and wasn't going to let it go anywhere inappropriate, which is why when that came up, he did put a good boundary up. Or it was, I'm just spitballing here, but maybe it's like, it's not as common to be hit on by women when you're a dude. True. So he might have just been like, not even aware to pick up the cue that you were hitting on him. And then he's like, oh, this is a thing? Oops. It's just the whole point.
Like, oh, wait, I should have said that earlier.
Yeah. The whole point about this, when you come back to like being in a relationship, is when we hear that there's other details and information, we can feel hurt and scared based on how we assume the other person was thinking. And then we jump into expressing that hurt and fear, oftentimes with shame or blame or some kind of confrontation, before going, wait, let me understand what was going on for you. Oh, you just, in that moment, you weren't thinking about our relationship. You were focused on your project at hand. You were like, nope, I'm just trying to get this work thing taken care of. So I reached out and did this thing, and I never mentioned it to my partner. I didn't think that was, that's different parts of my brain. I'm able to compartmentalize that. But, oh man, my partner was kind of bummed not hearing that I was staying late at work and I didn't give them a heads up.
Yes. Whoops. Yeah. And it could be something completely innocuous like that. It doesn't have to be lying about like, who were you with? Where were you? It's not about those kinds of insecurities. It could be you weren't where you said you were when you told me you were going to be. You told me you do the dishes and the dishes are still in the sink the next day. Were you lying when you said you would do them, or were you just trying to tell me what I wanted to hear? Like that's another piece of this too. What is driving the disclosure or lack thereof?
Yes.
Is it, I want to be viewed a certain way. I want to be upheld in a certain image with my partner. I don't want them to be disappointed in me. When, spoiler alert, if you tell somebody something and you blow smoke up their ass essentially, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to totally do that, and then you don't, that ends up disappointing them more. You're only staving off the conflict short term. Eventually it's going to come out. And I think parents and teens go through this also. Oh yeah, I'll do the dishes. Oh yeah, I took the trash out. Oh yeah, I cleaned my lunchbox out. And then you look and it's like, no, you didn't. Like, why would you say that? Oh, I meant to. Best of intentions. And sometimes that's true. And sometimes they're like, I just wanted you to shut up. Like, I just wanted this nagging voice to stop. So I just said the thing that would make the voice stop. And it's like, back to sports or back to whatever else I'm watching. So being mindful that the other person really needs to be like, even if it's not eye contact wise, because we've talked about that too, but like forward facing, aware of the conversation, and you need to be watching their facial reactions. So when they're like, oh, I just didn't think to tell you, and that could be genuine, then you don't accuse them of being a liar. You'd be like, oh yeah, hey, in the future, I'd love it if you could tell me those things. See if there's a behavioral change then. If you want more of what you're asking for, you can't immediately shame or be disappointed in the person because they didn't give it to you the first time, because they might not have thought to. And this is that key of, well, I would have. Well, good for you. You're not dating yourself. So maybe next time, assume that your partner thinks differently than you, because they do, and tell them exactly what you want. I want to know the information. Were you with her Friday? No. Were you with her Saturday? No. Were you with her Sunday? Have you been with her any of the days of the last, like, you got to be very nitty gritty when it comes to this, almost like a detective.
Well, I think I disagree with that a little bit, because I think when you start getting into the detective, I get your point of being direct, like that's important. But when you start getting into directive, if you get yourself into detective mode, I think there's a more important underlying thing. The trust isn't there. I need to like take responsibility for knowing all of the things all the time.
For sure.
That feels like a behavior off when you've already like strongly reacted to omission of information. Yeah. It's like you've already gone that and you haven't addressed the underlying cause. I think the first time this happens, this is what we're going through, how to address this kind of situation now is pay attention to the underlying feelings, hurt, fear. Don't make assumptions, be curious, get to that place. And then, ask about and teach and give a growth opportunity discussion. So that's why I like what you said of, okay, so maybe that's how you would have thought. Cool. You've learned that relationship skill, which by the way, to your point, men and women culturally are often more socialized to have these types of relationship skills and think about other people. And men oftentimes are more culturally socialized to be single focused, track oriented, independent, solve the current present situation and not be as collaborative. And so great. You have a cool skill set. Instead of faulting your partner for not having that skill set, maybe it gives them the opportunity to learn it.
Exactly.
So I think that's kind of key instead of like going into like detective mode after the fact.
No, I agree. I think it's a good separation too, because when I meant detective mode, not like actually doing it, but more adopting the mindset of like, what is it that you're really after? Like, how specific does this question have to be for you to get the answer that you're wanting, rather than passively or indirectly or hinting, oh, like, how was your weekend? Oh, it was great. Well, you didn't tell me all these things. Like, you literally just asked how my weekend was. You didn't say, did I see so-and-so? And this has come up actually with one of my close friends too, personally, where the girlfriend got really upset because the guy friend was honest about, or the boyfriend of that person was honest about like watching sports or whatever it was, but forgot to mention they moved from like one friend's house to the next. Nothing happened. Literally just moved from like one apartment to the other. And the girl later on, this came out, was like, oh, how was so-and-so's house this weekend? And the guy answered like, oh, it was really good. And the girl was like, you lied to me. And he's like, wait, I'm sorry, what just happened? You said you were at this person's house and then you were at this person's house. And he's like, it was next door. Like, I do not see the big issue with this. And she just like couldn't get past it. So it's that felt sense of individually, what else is this person lying about? What else is, that is a very defensive, internally defensive mode to go into. Of like, I need to protect myself from potential harm, rather than going, in the grand scheme of things, if nothing bad happened, is this really like dishonesty that I'm going to want to end a relationship over? Probably not. Like that to me, I'd be like, okay, that's just omitting a detail. There wasn't anything sketchy about it. I probably wouldn't think to be like, oh, I told you I went to Target, then Stater Brothers. But later on, I'm like, I lied to you. I actually went to Stater Brothers first, and then I went to Target. Like, who cares?
But then I went to Chipotle.
I ate in the car and I cried and I told you I did it. Like, that's much different. Yeah. If your partner was like, did you have Chipotle today? And you're like, no.
Different.
That's a lot.
That's different.
Versus,
that's next episode.
Did you get any food today? Yeah, I did. Why didn't you tell me you went to Chipotle? You just asked me if I got food. I didn't think to say where.
Yeah.
Totally different.
Yeah. And that example of the reaction that we can have, I think is important to go back to an earlier point to dive into of creating safety to share, because in these early moments in relationship, if you hear a detail that wasn't shared with you and then your initial response is really flooded, hurt, scared, but comes out shame, blame, you're just training your partner to not share more in the future.
Exactly.
And so first of all, just to dive into that a little bit, I can't tell you how many men I work with. I don't think it's exclusive to men, but it's a common thing with men because of, the cultural pressures we put. How many men I work with who talk to me about, I want to turn to my partner and share some of these things, but I'm really worried about how she's going to react. I know that she's asked me to share things, and when I do, it always goes bad. I'm in a lose-lose. Either I don't share something, which I know she doesn't like, but I want to be a great partner and share. But when I do share things, it's not okay. And I'm not even talking about like sharing bad things. It's like going to one house versus the other when you're at the game. And all of a sudden that being a deception point. Yeah. So I just want to say that because I want to have a narrative that I want to share the narrative that I experience in my session with relationships that a lot of people really do want to be sharing these things when they've heard the feedback from their partners, and they feel stuck not really being able to because the response is so difficult.
Yes.
And that's what I want to highlight and talk about, creating safety, like you said, about making sure that if you want your partner to be able to share the details that are important to you and offer more information, making sure that we are creating safety for our partners to do that.
And having a positive, and not necessarily like you're like, oh my gosh, I love that you cheated on me or whatever the information is, but having a neutral to positive reaction in terms of, okay, I appreciate you telling me the truth. May not like hearing it, and I'm going to have strong reactions to it. However, I asked for the truth, or you are sharing the truth unsolicited, unprompted. And I appreciate that so that I can actually make a decision. And I have worked with couples as well where had the information that was disclosed been a lie or had to be like dragged out of the partner, it's not necessarily about the information. It's all of the dance that I had to do to get it out of you that behaviorally makes me not want to be with you. I actually probably wouldn't have left you if you had just been honest about whatever it was, cheating, finances, things that every couple might have a different view on, which I respect. It's the deceit. It's the intentionally withholding information and separately actually lying about it that I have the problem with. It's not what you lied about. It's that you lied. Or it's not what you withheld it's not the what that you withheld the information about. It's that you withheld it. And this is a pattern in our relationship. If this is the only time you've ever withheld it, I have a much more easy time being curious and going, what was it about? Was it the content of this that you were really nervous about? Had you not processed it? We usually are very open and we share a lot of information. This seems so different. What's going on is much easier when that's the exception to the rule. When the rule is I never tell them the truth, or I rarely tell them the truth, and they always have to find out after the fact. And it's like very childish to be like, oh, I got caught again. Why are either of you staying in this pattern when you feel like it's a parent-child dynamic that you're like, I knew you didn't brush your teeth. You just ran your toothbrush under the faucet.
And I think that's a different toxic dynamic than what I'm thinking about for this episode. I think it's good to acknowledge and say that's a thing. I am thinking about that first dynamic you're talking about. Maybe it's the first time it's happened, or there is this pattern of, hey, a lot of the, normally like we're good on the chats, but this it's not, how come this detail I had to figure out on my own kind of thing.
What is it about this detail?
And that's where going back to the detective place in a good way that you clarified of being curious. And I think a good way to look at that is, what is my partner concerned about, or what distresses them there? As a therapist, I go straight into what's the fear. I'll just like get to the point. But I get that a lot of people in these moments may not even be aware. Like if you like turn to your partner and say, well, what are you scared of telling me? They might be like either A, that's so scary, I can't tell you. Or B, be like, well, it's not fear. I'm not like scared. It doesn't feel like that way. But there's a concern, there's a distress, there could be this thing. Again, safety isn't there, either because the relationship hasn't been developed safely, or the partner doesn't have that skill set, isn't used to diving into some of these types of sharing. So it's just kind of like, I've never done that before. I don't know. I don't really disclose that stuff. That's just a good reminder to, again, be curious in the detective role for what your partner is concerned about, or again, a little bit uncomfortable, scared. Distress is my always big blanket term that I like. What distresses them about sharing these things?
And not everybody, I will share, is going to have the level of insight you are desiring. So if you've been in therapy for a while, even if you've been in couples therapy for a while, with or without individual, the day that the disclosure happens or the day the information is found out or discovered may not be the day that eventually things get shaken out. And what I mean by that is, let's say I had this secret or something that I was not sharing for quite some time because I was afraid of being shamed or judged, or very valid things that have come up, or I just didn't think to share it because I'm like, that was like 15 years ago. Who cares? Like and if you're going to base a decision to be with me off of something 15 years ago, goodbye. Like, I don't even want to be with somebody who would do that. I don't care what the information is. That when your partner learns this, that doesn't mean that they are going to be as okay with it as you are, because you have lived with the information for however long you've lived with it. They are literally, it's seconds old in their brain. So you have to be very mindful to give your partner time and space to process whatever they have discovered or has been disclosed to them, because that is allowing them to have their own reaction and then genuinely pick how to move forward from there, rather than feeling coerced or feeling like they have to stay with you or something like that.
I love that idea of giving partners processing time, especially with this issue, because if a lot of what's going on is the partner's not sharing all details or important detail or something like that because they're worried of the response, it doesn't feel safe, when they're confronted with it, they're going to get into stress mode. So it's going to be, heart pumping, cortisol's going, they're going to be uncomfortable, worried about how are we in the relationship, what's wrong, what's going on. And the point is, they're going to have that experience. It's going to be the worst time to try to collaborate on healing or problem solving. Giving that partner that feedback initially, saying, hey, here's the deal. This was hard for me. Lets them have that stress experience, hear that first thing that stressed them out, and then they process it, come back to go, oh, okay, grounded. Oh, look, my partner was actually pretty inviting and curious with me. It's on the table now. I got to address it. Okay, let me try to take some of that feedback I heard, and now I can come to a collaborative discussion. Now I can come to a grounded discussion. If you try to like ram in your perspective while your partner is in distress, you're just going to clash. You're much more likely, I should say, you're not guaranteed, but you're much more likely to get into a clash. No one's listening. No one's understanding one another. No one's healing anything. Everyone's just getting hurt.
Yeah, and it becomes a contest almost, or a competition of who's more hurt, who's more right, who's more. That's not going to get you closer in a relationship. I think being understanding and appreciative of the truth when we are given it, and not shaming our partner out of future times of them giving it to us. You might not like it. And if you don't think you'll like it, and you don't really know that you're going to change any behaviors or make different decisions with it, don't ask for it. Like that. I'm not saying that you have to gaslight yourself, because that's impossible by definition. But if you would like to live in some sense of delusion, and part of your brain knows that this truth is this, and part of your brain's like, yeah, but that would be so icky to find out, because it would totally pierce the veil of how amazing that they are for us. So we're just never going to do. Everybody has that choice. You don't have to go asking for the truth, but there are going to be times where you stumble upon it, or it's given to you, and you're just like, I don't like that. It's like, I just thought of like ordering at a restaurant. You and I both love carnitas burritos, and that one place. And if they were out of carnitas one day, that'd be, first of all, it'd be a lie if we called them and we're like, hey, we're going to order these. Like, yeah, totally. We'll have them ready for you in 30 minutes. And then we get there like, actually, we were out of carnitas, so we just lied to you, but here's chicken instead. Disappointment. I don't want a disappointment burrito. Whereas if they were honest, I might not like that, but I'm not going to be like, are you sure you don't have carnitas? That's not going to change that they don't have it. That's an uncomfortable truth. It's disappointing, but it is what it is. And I'd rather know it than drive all the way there thinking I'm going to get one thing and then really getting another, or getting disappointed.
Well, that's where responses to uncomfortable truths are the long-term factors in a relationship. Like, how do you respond to your partner when you get the uncomfortable truth? It doesn't mean you hide your disappointment, but do you do it in a way that is still supportive? And can both partners get to a place of tolerating uncomfortable truths? Because we have to tolerate for ourselves and when our partner shares with us. And I also think that when there is this experience that we go, oh, my partner didn't really share everything I was kind of intentionally trying to ask about, I think it's also really good to remember that a lot of the time, it's very true when the omitting partner says, well, I didn't want to share because I didn't want to hurt you. And I get like there's a thing, like if you go to the extreme, like say infidelity, that's one context, but even just like sharing I stopped off, I went to Chipotle and from the earlier example, and I didn't want to tell you because I thought you might be kind of hurt that I didn't get you something at Chipotle. I get that that tends to be a good marker of, well, if you thought it was going to hurt me, then maybe not the thing. But we tend to focus on, wait, so you knew it wasn't great? And then we kind of like get into shame blame mode. I think it's also really important and much more healing and collaborative to go, oh, so there was some kind of care there. Something inside of you. Yeah. One part thought this would hurt you, maybe not the greatest decision, but another part of you didn't want to cause me that pain. Don't really love how you went about choosing how not to cause me pain, but but if we focus on there's still like a foundational care there, that's a place to focus and grow on. That's what actually can get to a healing space and get to okay, thank you. Maybe that trying to filter and edit what you shared with me was from a great intention. And I'm here to let you know that actually that doesn't fully work for me. I love that you're caring for me. Here's what might be how I feel really cared for. I feel really cared for by you. Just, if you don't know what I want from Chipotle, just get something for me. Just do it.
Yes.
If you're scared about what it is or wrong, or whatever, you can't do it, so you just don't. Okay. And don't tell me, fine. So having that can be really, really useful. Remembering that there is a core of care that can come from a lot of these scenarios of not wanting to hurt someone, and focusing on that as a positive way to build on great healing and collaboration.
Yes. And when I often think back to some sessions I've had with people where they're like, well, thanks for thinking of me in the aftermath of telling me the thing that you did that's going to hurt me. Next time, I'd like you to think about the fact that it would hurt me before you do it. Like, if we're going to have the steps of appreciation and care, like, can we circumvent the need for this thing to have happened? And it really does depend on the couple, their individual strengths and their foundation and their willingness, which we've talked about on other episodes before. We have an entire episode on willingness. What is the willingness to actually move forward? Is this a fluke thing? Do they show genuine remorse? Were they honest? And do they have any insight, any at all, as to why they did whatever they did? Well, I didn't want you to get disappointed. Or that one time we went to Chipotle, you had food poisoning from the chicken and all they had was chicken. So I didn't think to, you'd be surprised what your partner might be able to fill in for you in the back, like the back of their mind, as to why they do or don't do some of the things that you would or wouldn't do. They're a different person, so treat them as such.
And kind of going down that road, that makes me think about this. Really opens up a great discussion to understand each other deeply, including our values of understanding, like, oh, that's what they were thinking and why that meant care for them. That's why not sharing meant care. Because for them, their values like, no, like we edit everything we say, no matter what. If anything, I think it'd be just as problematic to have a completely open mind. I think a good example is people have very different values of how much do they share with their current partner, their past sexual experiences, like how much. Yes. There's always an interesting discussion there. For some people, the spectrum is you don't even acknowledge that you've had any sexual experience or never touched or thought about sex before your current partner, versus you sit down for like 3 hours one night and you describe every sex you've ever had with anyone. I don't recommend either approach, but the point is, in that spectrum, there's people have landed with different values or perspectives of what to share. So what you're saying about getting into that place of like being into their mindset of what they were thinking when they chose not to share some information, oh, that's where the care came from. And then you can also share, well, I kind of think differently about that. Here's how it is for me. And then when you two share those differences, then you can then have a great, again, collaborative discussion of, cool, so for us moving forward, what feels good for us? How do we want to do this? Do we want to talk about Chipotle? Or is it, you know what? I didn't think about it, but yeah, don't tell me when you go get Chipotle. I'm happy to be in bliss because actually that's not threatening to me. And now that I know where you're coming from, I can remember every time I learn you got Chipotle without me, you love me. Great. New idea, new thought I had never had before. Please go get Chipotle tomorrow and don't tell me because I know you love me now. You can really have a cool newer set of understandings in that space versus blame. No, thank you.
Yeah, get to the core of it. And you can make whatever decision you want. And that's probably more what we'll talk about in part 2.
Mm-hmm.
When it's the withholding of information versus actual lying. That'll be the second part, the actual lying. If it's the withholding, be curious as to why they withheld it. And if it is a pattern, you get to decide. Is that a pattern you want to participate in? And is it only about one specific thing? Or does it seem to be about like everything in the relationship, that it feels like you're pulling teeth to get data and information? Ask yourself if you are being a safe person to tell the truth to. And if your side of the street is clean and the other person is still not giving you any details, even when asked, then that would be a decision to make on your own time about the future of the relationship.
Yes. Love that. Yeah, I think it's a great summary. I have nothing else to add on summary. Hope that's super useful for everyone. And I look forward to doing part 2 of Liar, Liar, Pants on Fire to check this other dynamic out. So if you liked this episode, make sure you check out the more direct version lying part 2 next time.
Yes. And if you like the show, please like, rate, and subscribe. We really appreciate it. And if you like a certain episode or you think somebody could benefit from it, it costs you nothing to share it with another person. So we would really appreciate that to get this show more well known.
Yeah. If you have questions for us or you want us to answer a specific relationship question on the podcast, shoot us an email, Ryan and Talia at thecouplesguidepodcast.com.
You can also tune into my Q&As on Instagram at Talia Bombola. I try to do about 1 a week, and any of the questions that are asked that we think are like podcast length worthy, we'll pick those and we'll talk about them on the show.
Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Take good care.